Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching us live here on Flux Motorsport TV on our YouTube channel. I am Murphy_GBR, and I'm going to be bringing you, alongside my co-host, the console, tonight's GT3 action around this fantastic Zolder circuit. The guys are just going through their final moments of a free practice session now. 25 seconds remaining of that one. And then we're about to get underway with 20 minutes of qualification and then 45 minutes of fast-paced racing action here around the Zolder circuit. I've mentioned his name, now let me introduce him. Are you there, Alex?
Good evening, mate. How you doing? How's things?
I'm very well, thank you, mate. Very well, thanks. And how about you? All set for some GT3s this evening?
Well, that's it. We've had double helpings on Sundays. Formula Renaults in the morning and GT3s in the evening. I can think of worse ways to spend it.
Most definitely, with a bit of F1 smudged into the middle, which I am yet to watch, so no spoilers will be given here, don't you worry about that. So, looking through the practice times, looks as though Bruce Law has come out on top. At the moment, we have got Barend, aka St. Bath. He's currently sat in second place in that running order. Then I think that's all. U82 currently sat in third position on that. Looking through all of the practice session that these guys have just been through, it looked as though Bruce Law actually struggled to get a quicker time than St. Bath through a lot of that session. Looks as though he's been able to pull it in towards the end and get that top spot. Doesn't really count for much though. It is just a free practice, just for these guys to try and hone in their settings. We're currently tracking Fast AF Gamer around this circuit in that fantastic looking BMW M6. Didn't really have the best outing last time. He'll definitely be looking to try and improve. Currently lapping round a 134.9. Let's see what he can get come the end of this session. But for those of you that weren't able to yet catch up on last week's action in the GT3s around Silverstone, Bruce Law came out on top, as he has done in all other Flux Motorsport championships so far. Barend did enough for second place, and then NRP, who has since retired from the championship, did enough for third place. Uniclark got himself into fourth, and Wantor 13 ended up in fifth position. But that is the end of this free practice session. Looked as though Fast AF Gamer did enough in the end to get on top, so he managed to get that BMW M6 absolutely singing, and that's going to make things very interesting as we go into tonight's qualification round. What are your thoughts on this one, Alex? You thinking that Bruce could be upset here?
Well, Bruce took a very strong victory last week at Silverstone, and I always like someone else to win it for a change. So if I was a betting man, I'd be keeping eyes on Faster Gamer and St. Bath for this week. The Zolder, much more twistier, tighter track. That AMG's big, heavy lump. But we wait and see.
Yep, that's all we can do. I think pretty tricky circuit this one, as we see Luke Snipes there just getting acquainted with the pit wall. That's going to put him straight back in.
Locating tap.
Yeah, well, unfortunate that I decided to pick on him for that first camera angle. Let's see whether or not he can do a little bit better this second time around. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting circuit, this one. For those of you that aren't perhaps too familiar with Zolder, quite a flat circuit, plenty of speed, but also some very technical, tricky turns to get used to. This one being my absolute nemesis. This is turn 2, and when you're going at full speed, your driving line really does make a difference onto how much you're able to hold onto your line going into turn 3 and turn 4, which are quite fast corners, but also how much strain you're going to put those tyres under, especially through a 45-minute race.
Yeah, so that whole first section is designed just to load that front left. Which is going to be really crucial in keeping cool, especially for the later part of the track.
Is indeed. Alright, Turkish now making his way onto the track. He remains in that Demon Tweak Z4. I'm quite surprised by that. It looked as though he really struggled in it last week. I was expecting a car change with this one, but good at him for sticking it out. Hopefully this Zolder circuit will be a little bit more akin to his setup and his driving style. Whilst we get used to the circuit, actually, let's jump on board with our previous pole sitter, with Fast AF Gamer. We'll jump into the cockpit cam so that we can get a good view. Looks as though he's just coming around the hairpin now. So he will make his way up to a very small chicane that we saw there. You can pretty much come through that one flat. Then into turn 10, which is, turn 9, I believe it is, which is a left to right, and then over the start-finish straight. So let's see what he can do to get this lap started. Open up here with turn 1, big wide open left-hander, and this is the one that I mentioned earlier. Turn 2, see him here relatively central to the track, clipping the apex midway through, and that's the right way to do it, early on to the power, and then he can just clip those inside apexes each way around. This one is a bit of a lift, throw, and then right back onto the power on what is essentially a drag race up to a very tricky chicane here. The chicane itself you can take relatively flat through without much turning, but if you get that wrong, you're likely to go into the gravel or suffer a pretty heavy slowdown penalty from the virtual race director. Then it's another drag all the way down to this tricky second chicane. This one definitely needs a little bit more care and attention. Much slower, and you are going to want to try and get a drive out using the full extent of the track, clipping up the outside curbs to be able to take this inside line, and then we're going to brake heavily, coming into a big right-hand hairpin as we see Fast AF Gamer now just looking to try and get around the Porsche 911 of Luke Snipes ahead. So then we can see them there past the 100-yard marker before they initiate the braking, hard onto the brakes, into the left before chucking it into the right, and that is going to make up a full circuit around this Zolder GP track. So, Fast AF Gamer there, we were on board with him. It's only going to be enough for third place at the moment for a provisional third. Bruce Law and Uniclark currently topping out ahead of him. Bruce Law going quick with a 132.115, so able to find just shy of 1 second extra onto what he got into his practice sessions, I believe. So it's definitely going to be a pretty hot qualifying. I wouldn't expect the race pace to last this long, but we'll have to wait and see how that materialises. Anybody that was watching the Formula Renault coverage from myself and Lecky 2000 this morning will know that the qualifying pace is much higher than what we expect with a fully fuel laden car, and the added incentive of trying to balance out your tyres as well to make them last for those 45 minutes on these accelerated tyre wear settings. So 3 drivers yet to set a lap. Currently KML Bryan. In fact, it looks as though Lecky has since just proven me wrong, setting up a 135 to go into 7th place. But KML Bryan and Luna Zodiac yet to set their laps. Let's have a look at what our current provisional pole sitter's doing in that blue and silver AMG. So I'm going to expect a lot of different lines being taken, perhaps through experience and perhaps through the different cars that are being used around this. The cars sort of playing into the strengths. We see Bruce Law there just running ever so slightly wide, so that's going to be an abandoned lap from him, I think. But yeah, expect the big nose heavy cars such as the AMG and Uniclark's Bentley as well to be quite coy going around the corners, trying to utilise all of the track, make sure that they don't scrub off any of that speed. And then some of the smaller, peppier pace cars such as the Ginettas or maybe that BMW Z4, perhaps able to take more unorthodox lines just to try and get in amongst some of the other drivers, make a bit of a nuisance for themselves. What about you, Alex? Have you got much experience around this Zolder circuit? I know you've not much experience in the GT3 car, but in other classes?
Not much of the GT3 cars, but I've been around Zolder a fair few times. My experience is that first section can sort of really make or break the lap. If you get that wrong, you're going to suffer for the rest of the lap. We're seeing already a few guys taking different approaches to it. A lot of guys sort of trying to clip that curb on the inside of turn 2 there. Personally, I try and avoid it. I always find it upsets the car, especially when you're trying to get the power down as early as you can, just trying to open it up. But these big heavy, the AMGs, big heavy front ends, the Cadillacs seem to be taking it relatively sort of flat and going straight over it. But yeah, tough section, tough track. That big braking zone into the first chicane is going to be another place to watch as well. Good place to overtake if you can get it, but you risk burning a lot of your tyres up if you get it wrong.
Definitely, yeah. I think there's a few key points to look out for as well on this circuit, especially after we get the green light and the race is underway. Turn 1 is going to be pretty chaotic for anybody that gets a good drive away from a mid or low pack position. They make their way through those cars quite safely. You can go 3 wide into turn 1, but it's not going to be a pretty outcome come the end of it, especially when you get perhaps little misjudgments. Other key point where Alex had just mentioned as well, into that braking zone, into that first chicane. Whilst the first chicane you can take on quite a straight line without having to do much left and right steering wheel turning. Only one car can do this. I think after the start, with them quite tightly bunched, I'm going to expect a few potential runoffs there. Hopefully no major collisions causing much damage, but they're definitely hot spots for action. So ones to keep an eye on. We have got 11 minutes and 30 seconds remaining of this session though. Bruce Law remains in top spot for a provisional pole at the moment. Then we've got St. Bath currently sat in second with Uniclark in third. Fast AF Gamer yet to get an improvement on his 133.099, which was enough to take the top spot in practice, but it's definitely not going to be enough in this qualifying run. Currently watching Lecky 2000 take his black and yellow AMG liveried machine around here. You can see him braking heavily into that first chicane. That's the one we're speaking about, and that is that flat line. Not much turning to go on with there. Do just have to watch yourself to make sure you don't go outside of those white lines for the track limits, or the race director will be absolutely punishing you with a slowdown. And it's hard to do as well because this is a relatively slow section, plenty of corners going through there, and even with the lift off, because there's a braking zone involved, the race director not actually recognising the fact that you've lifted off or slowed down. So it's around about this point here where you can actually get away from them through this quite wide open chicane. Just a little S, left right, more of an S really, and then heavy braking to come down into turn 10 and end that lap. Let's see whether or not Lecky can get an improvement on here. 133.729 to beat. Crosses the line and there's no improvement there from him. Let's have a look at Wanter. He had a great outing last week. He unfortunately just got caught out a little bit towards the end, if memory serves right, in his Porsche. But let's see what he can achieve today. Certainly showing that he's got the pace to keep up with the rest of them, and you can see there from his lap times as well. He's only 8 tenths away from the blisteringly fast pace of Bruce Law and St. Bath there in first and second spots, and Uniclark as well inside that Bentley, not too far away. Let's see if he can make any improvements. Looks as though he's just got that second chicane ever so slightly wrong though. That's going to cost him in terms of his momentum and potentially a slowdown penalty as well, depending on how far inside he came. It looks as though Luna Zodiac just returning to the pits. He's going to have enough time to get back out on track. In fact, a lot of these boys have still got enough time to come in, get some repairs done, refuel, retire, and get out and set another few laps. It'll be interesting to see how this one plays out though. Bruce Law remaining on top spot. Remember folks, last week Bruce Law managed to pick up a brace of triples really, ended up getting the fastest lap in the race along with pole position, along with the race victory, which is definitely a first. He's not going to get that this week though. In the Formula Renaults, he was actually upset with losing out on his pole position by just a couple of tenths. He did pick up that race victory though, so maybe can make it 5 wins out of 5. It'll be interesting to see. I beg your pardon, 6 wins out of 6 this will make it. He did also get victory in Thursday's GT1 Championship as well.
I tell you what I have noticed, which is good to see, is that from third down to just about 8th down in Luna, only separated just outside of a second of each other. So we're already seeing the sort of packs starting to close up. That's exactly it. Yeah.
I mean, looks as though, I mean, let's have a look at the last place. I can't tell whether or not it's All Right Turkish, or I'm guessing it is, as opposed to All U82. Would expect All U82 to be a little bit higher up, and it is in fact All Right Turkish. You can tell there from the state of that front end. Definitely struggling on this circuit. Whether or not it's the circuit or the car, but he's 8.5 seconds away from the pace of the leader at the moment. That's going to cost him pretty dearly when it comes to this race being underway, unless he can try and improve upon that. KML Bryan as well, our youngest player in the division, I think, currently rocketing round in his Audi R8, but he's 5.5 seconds away from the pace of the leaders as well. Looks as though he's just taken a little bit too much away from that first chicane.
Yeah, you can see there the sort of time you can lose if you get the braking wrong there, locking up the fronts. Doing that in a race would be much more costly.
He's losing a bit of control under braking there as well, yeah.
Looks
definitely
like he's a little heavy.
In the car.
If he could hear me, he probably needs to put the brake balance back just a little bit, settle the rear down.
He's driving on a gamepad though, one of the few drivers within the community that races on a pad, and I wonder whether or not this is helping as well. In fact, the balance of that car in general, you could see the amount of understeer coming out of that Audi R8 then was unbelievable compared to with the amount of turning it had. Looked as though he was pretty much full lock, and that Audi R8 just not going anywhere. So whether or not that's a bit of a blip on ours, but there's definitely a lot of oversteer going on there, and he's not going to make much of an improvement. If he does, no improvement that time around from KML Bryan. Let's flip on back over to our current provisional pole sitters. We just saw Bryan getting very back-end happy. So Bruce Law currently sat in first. Fast AF Gamer must have been spurred on with what I was saying about his lack of improvement. He's since gone in and put in a 132.250. So that's enough to claim the front row alongside Bruce Law in second place. And if memory serves me right, I think second place might actually give you a better track position around this Zolder GP circuit. We'll have to wait and see in about 5.5 minutes when we get set up onto the grid. Looked as though Bruce Law there just falling victim as well, maybe taking a little bit too much away from the first chicane. Doesn't look as though he's slowing down, but maybe he's just trying to keep his eye in for the rest of the circuit. But we can see there how much more settled that AMG is into that second chicane section. Looking much flatter through all of that and able to get the power down without any sliding dramatics. Does look as though there he is slowing right down.
Just talking about the start again, Murph. So I think you're right. First place is going to be on the outside into turn 1, but coming into turn 2, they're going to be holding the inside line if you can make it stick, which is the one that will matter. The person on the outside is going to have to back off massively and scrub a lot of momentum. So whoever is up on the front row is going to have to be very careful and play sort of smart to not get caught out, sort of trying to fight for position and get sort of stolen from themselves, really.
I'm not sure about you, but in my personal opinion, I prefer the outside line coming into turn 1 of Zolder. To be on the outside of it allows you, in fact we can see there Bruce Law opting for that outside line.
Depends who's on the inside, I guess. How polite they are.
It always does. It always does. How much faith you've got in that competitor at the side of you. Yep, that is definitely for sure. But I think with these two boys, currently Bruce Law and Fast AF Gamer, but same can be said with both St. Bath Uniclark, All U82 and Wanta. You'd feel pretty self-assured that you're not going to get any silly antics going into turn 1. Unfortunately, sometimes it can be the action that's going on behind you that you just end up being a passenger to. But we'll have to wait and see. 3 minutes and 40 seconds remaining of this qualification session, and then we're going to get our drivers out on track. They're going to have 2 minutes to set themselves up, and then we will be under green light conditions to get this second race in the championship underway. Just whilst we run through this, let me go through our current championship standings, just in case you haven't been able to check them on our social media accounts. If you don't follow us on Instagram, Twitter or Facebook, you can quite easily stay in touch with all of the action if you're not part of the community itself by checking out and following us as soon as they're being calculated. But GT3 championship standings as they are, with Bruce Law on top with 37 points. Bar end, which is St. Bath in the lobby at the moment, sat in second place in 30 points. NRP, who's since retired, was on 27, so now third place goes to Uniclark with 25 points. Wantor does enough to get himself into fourth position with 23 points. Alaxon, who you will know as All U82 on your screens, currently sat in Joins last time around, he's in sixth place on 17 points. Amber Chewy, who was also retired from the championship, he was in eighth place, so that now allows Luke to take that position up. Then Alright Turkish does enough for eighth place, I do beg your pardon. Luke was promoted to seventh after NRP also left. Then Old Smoky just behind Alright Turkish, followed by drivers that got DNFs, which include Islander Jim, Luna Zodiac, Quiet Man and KML Brian last time around. So 1 minute 38 seconds remaining as the drivers look to try and get their final laps in. Let's look how this one progresses. We've got Bruce Law out on track at the moment. Let's bring up the map as things start to get pretty heavy. Looks as though Alright Turkish has managed to find his way back into the session, so must have been disconnected there. Same with KML Brian. We'll have to wait and see whether or not these guys get themselves back on. So as we can see, a lot of congestion here. Looks as though somebody's also locked up into the first chicane. Not too sure who that is, but some drivers are going to have to be cautious on there. We do have yellow flags on the first chicane.
Looks like if Bruce isn't careful, he's going to catch the back of this train just before the end of his lap. I think it's Uniclark sitting just in front of him, or maybe Lecky, sort of top of a yellow car there.
Looks as though that's KML's Brian's R8 at the moment, and we see Bruce Law there holding back just to try and make sure he gets the clean air. But yeah, that did look as though it is the black and yellow liveried AMG, perhaps of Lecky 2000 there. And now we can see Bruce Law obviously happy that he's got enough distance made up to now get himself on there for a fast one. Let's flick on over to Fast AF Gamer. He is currently on a hot lap. He was just sat right behind Bruce Law. Is it going to be any improvement this time around? It's not, so he remains in provisional second place. He is going to have one more lap to try and improve upon that though. Let's have a look at St. Bath at the moment. Just coming up to the final sector.
It's like he didn't quite make it in time for another go at it. I don't think he'll be happy with that.
No, it doesn't look as though he is in at all. It actually sounds as though it's a pretty slow lap, so he's lifted off from that one. Let's jump on board with somebody else. We've got Alright Turkish out there at the moment with that battered front end. He's currently sat at the back of the grid. Still made an improvement, but still remains 7 seconds off the pace of the leaders. In the meantime, let's get over to Fast AF Gamer. Let's see how his lap's doing as he progresses on through. I think since got Bruce Law, he's decided that enough is enough. So the main pressure now able to be put on from Fast AF Gamer. I do believe that St. Bath as well is actually on an abandoned lap. He hasn't come into the pits, but it did sound as though he was tickling that car around, so I'm not expecting it to be a quick one from him. So is Matthew, aka Fast AF Gamer, going to make an improvement, maybe upset the bonus points given to Bruce Law for a pole position on the build-up to the race? We'll find out in just a couple of corners.
That BMW is looking absolutely planted, even under braking and coming into the corners. Whatever setup he's got in that, he's definitely been working on it.
I think he has. I think I saw in the chat that he hasn't actually done much of a change, but it's certainly enough for second place. Not enough to try and knock off the provisional pole sitter, which is now going to be your pole sitter for this evening's GT3 Championship race around the circuit of Zolder. So Bruce Law takes that spot. Fast AF Gamer is going to be alongside him on that first row, though. St. Bath and Uniclark make up the second row, and then All U82 and Wantor on the third row. Lecky 2000 does enough for 7th place alongside Luna Zodiac, with Luke Snipes in 9th, KML Bryan in 10th, and then All Right Turkish making up the back of this grid. So that's going to be your running order. We're about to get our 2 minutes underway as these guys make their ways to the grid and make their final adjustments, ready and set for 45 minutes of on-track action here at Zolder. So there we have it. Looks as though... In fact, where on earth is Bruce Law from this running order? Just looking, Fast AF Gamer is currently sat on the outside. Looks as though Bruce Law may have been disconnected. That will be absolutely tragic for his perfect record to be ruined by a seemingly disconnection. Yeah, but it's going to be Fast AF Gamer starting on top spot with St. Bath alongside him, Uniclark and All U82. All of these guys being bumped up a position. Really sad to see that happen. We do have rules in place here at Flux Motorsport where if we lose a number of drivers through a disconnection, we will restart the lobby, but it looks as though we've only lost Bruce Law from this one. We did previously have 11 drivers on track. So we're entering the final minute of Tinker Time here. These guys will be getting the race strategies all set up. Not sure what has happened. I will check any information that we can get through our Discord, but really unfortunate turn of events there. Well, perhaps for Bruce Law, certainly not for all the other drivers on track. They'll be rubbing their fists together with this possibility.
It does look like Bruce has just dropped off the face of the earth, so definitely something major going on than just a disconnection for Bruce. Shame to see him go.
I see that he's currently writing a message, but unfortunately it's going to come too late. We are just getting ready for the lights here. And keep an eye out into turn 1. But racing is away here in the GT3 Championship. Round 2 around this Zolder circuit. We saw Wanta there just having a little look in that Porsche 911. Thought better of it, so it's quite clean going into turn 1. All drivers looking to get away quite safely. But it is Fast AF Gamer. Looks as though Wanta has made his way up into 2nd place, so that's fantastic running from him. Let's have a look here into the chase view. We are on board with Uniclark at the moment. So that is Wanta ahead of him with St. Bath in 2nd place, and then Fast AF Gamer romping away, but it looks as though... Was that Luna Zodiac? I think
McLaren,
it was.
yeah.
Luna Zodiac's McLaren there, just getting all sorts of out of shape. We saw it oversteering wildly. And let's bring up the map to see whether or not he's managed to get himself back away. He has, but he's lost out on a heap of time there towards the rest of the pack. Jump on track side, let's have a look at the braking coming into the 2nd chicane as Matthew makes his way through that. Fast AF Gamer nice and clean away, and all the rest of the cars, no real drama to spot apart from that potential spin out from Luna Zodiac.
It looks like Wanta is hassling the back of that Audi. He's had his nose every which way trying to get round, trying to get the move done early on, obviously trying to escape Uniclark in that Bentley, who we know is quick from last week.
Yeah, it looked as though he was having a little look around the outside, and we can see them here going at it hammer and tongs. It looks as though he's going to maybe have a look around the outside again and do him under braking. 2 cars do come together, and that's going to push Wanta down onto the gravel and allow Uniclark now to rain down upon him. Just coming over the start-finish, looks as though a few flashes of the lights here going on from Wanta. Whether or not he's not happy, I'm not too sure, but it did look as though he made the rod for his own back by trying to go around the outside and be late under braking.
It's a very brave move to get on the outside, especially into that S's, because on the 2nd S on the inside there's like a rumble strip which will rip the car away from you. So brave move if you can pull it off. If you get it wrong, it doesn't look so hot.
Yeah, that's very true. So we're still tracking round Uniclark at the moment, who's now trying to chase down Wanta. Doesn't look as though Uniclark's able to make massive gains upon that Porsche though. Let's see what we can do, as looks as though both St. Bath and Wanta getting a little bit out of shape there into the chicane. I can imagine that might well be a slowdown for Wanta, whereas St. Bath just caught a bit too much curb on exit. No changes in position at the moment, though, as we see Kamel Bryan's made up quite a lot of time. He now finds himself in 5th place, so Lecky's dropped right down the running order, as has Luke Snipes. I wonder whether or not there's been a potential coming together there, but let's have a look at the moment with Lecky, who looks as though he's currently attacking Luna Zodiac as best he can. Luna Zodiac there getting out of shapes again, and a huge impact with the wall. That's going to be some heavy damage on that McLaren. He's going to have to try and limp it home. Team now returning back onto track safely, but yeah, that is going to be one damaged McLaren, that's for sure. So Lecky moves up into 8th position, and the front end of that Mercedes does look a little bit wonky, so it does look as though he's had a potential coming together. I wonder if we go over to Luke Snipes as well, if we'll see some damage to the rear, and maybe that's what's happened to these two drivers. We can see that Porsche looking to step out from him. It looks as though it's relatively clean. Let's get back to the action at the front, though, at the moment. So St. Bath is leading in 2nd place to Wanta and Uniclark. He's got a bit of a gap building up, but this battle between Wanta and Uniclark looks as though it's evened out now. So Wanta's got a little bit of breathing space, finds himself currently sat in 3rd position.
And this is what we saw from Wanta last week. Had great pace around Silverstone, but just pushed too hard too early on, too much out of the car, and had that quite a big shunt really. Hopefully this doesn't happen here as Zolder. He's running well. Maybe just a sort of big experience will get him sort of just settle in. It's still 40 minutes left to go in this race, and you've got to be in it at the end to win.
That is exactly true. I mean, it does look as though he's making small gains here on St. Bath. In fact, he comes together and collides with the rear end of him, and collides with him twice. In fact, he ends up collecting all sorts of cars. Wanta there getting a little bit too mischievous, and that's cost both him and St. Bath a position each. So Uniclark now steps into 2nd place, managed to get away from that relatively lightly, and I can imagine that St. Bath will be saying all sorts of things underneath his visor at the moment from what looked to be a little lapse in concentration. Maybe a difference in braking tactics between the two drivers, but I think from the lap times there shouldn't be much going on between them. Definitely want a review again, I think. What did you make of that, Alex? Did you manage to catch that one in full?
That was, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Wanta just coming into the brakes slightly heavier, sort of trying to take a deeper line. Just catching the back of St. Bath there, but they all managed to get a bump out of that, Uniclark too, so hopefully there's not too much damage to these cars for the front runners, as that'll let Matthew really drive away. He's already pulled out 9 seconds on this little pack here, but this is exactly what I was talking about one sort of getting too hot under the collar too early, and getting yourself involved in these sorts of incidents far sort of early on, and really damaging his later race.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I wouldn't go, I don't think for any 1 second that it was intentional. I don't even think it was a major mistake. I think it was just a slight lapse in recognising the car in front of him, but it certainly cost him 1 position. Uniclark has since fallen back into 4th position, so I did miss where that happened. But I think if anybody was to suffer any damage from that one, I think damage to Uniclark could be minimal. It did look as though both cars had slowed down considerably by that point. I think it's more likely to be Wanta that picked up the most of the brunt, with his impact being on that front right-hand side. But it looks as though he's going pretty well at the moment. He's not losing much time at all to St. Bath, who we're still tracking around. Let's have a look at the action a little bit further down the field. We've got a bit of stuff going on between All U82 and KML Bryan at the moment. KML Bryan sat in 5th place. All U82 ended up getting put down the running order ever so slightly, so he was definitely running quicker than this in qualification, but these cars now are fully laden with fuel and in tyre management mode, so we'll have to wait and see how this one plays out.
This is a great effort from KML to come from the back of the grid near enough in sort of 5 laps and be fighting for 5th. He's going to have his work cut out for him defending from LU82 though. LU82 not pretty handy in the AMG, but he's going well. He's sort of keeping it nice, clean and tidy, which is in this early stage of the races is all he can do really.
I think that's one of the key features. He is a very young driver and perhaps just needs to get used to these extended races that sometimes you're competing with yourself more than competing with the cars around you. Sometimes just running your own race and not pushing too hard may avoid any instances like we saw in his qualification session, which just saw him outpacing himself ever so slightly. He looks as though he's defending quite well here, though, against all U82, as he just runs a little bit too wide. That's going to make it easy pickings there. Looked as though he got his braking line just a little bit messed up, as we see Uniclark there ahead of us, taking that third place spot from Wanta. So it looks as though it made it relatively easy. Wanta really unhappy with it. He looks as though he's trying to get right back onto the back of that Bentley, try and get that position made back up. But the first 9 minutes of this race have been action-packed, as we see Uniclark there getting very sideways. Is he going to collide with the wall? It looks as though he does make some contact. That's going to allow Wanta back through. And let's have a stick with Uniclark. He's back on track now, but his car definitely not tracking correctly there, so I think some damage to the front end. We'd expect to see Uniclark in this next lap around. Very much unexpected from what is a very, very regular driver here in Uniclark. YT.
That's really unfortunate, because that's happened in turn 1, which means you have to do a full lap with a damaged car, sort of limping it home. He's going to lose tons of time limping it home back to the pits. And coming into turn 2, it looked like Wanta got a little loose there as well, so I wonder whether sort of in the changes in their places that he's had some sort of incident.
Well, we are on the weather forecast for today. Around this circuit is pretty much clear. There are going to be bouts of cloud passing over the top, but tyre temperatures are going to be relatively high, and it is quite a demanding track on your tyres, especially if your car isn't quite well balanced up, as we see Lunar Zodiac there just moving alongside for 1 to 13. Nicely done there from our back marker, making little to no impact from the pace setters at the front of the pack. A little bit more action now between KML Bryan and Lecky 2000. Let's have a look what this will bring up. So KML Bryan still remains in 5th spot. Looks as though Lecky wants it from him at the moment, as KML Bryan just makes a contact with the wall, and it's these little instances throughout the race that will cost you, because that will do some damage, potentially to the rear end as well, which you don't want to get damaged on a circuit like this in these rear-wheel drive cars.
And we can see the difference in lines from Lecky. Just kept that corner wide open, used all of the track, and has kept the momentum, and look, now he's going to be able to hang it right on the outside. It looks like a little bit of contact was made there.
Maybe a little bit of contact. I'm not sure, because Lecky looked as though he got through relatively clean. Let's have a look. I think if it was contact, it must have been very minimal. I'll have to wait and see on anybody's replays through that one. But Lecky is now successful in taking 5th spot, so pretty good running from him. New to the GT3 car classification. Of course, you'll have seen him featured within many of our Rubbins Racing Championships previously, but now joining me on the microphone on a Sunday morning and commentating on our GT1 Championship as well. So he's found himself slotted into this GT3 Championship, and it looks as though his time and persistence to try and get that AMG singing is paying off. Not too far away from the lap times of the front runners as it stands. I think as the race progresses, that's where you'll see a larger differential come on as the guys at the front start to burn off fuel and potentially pit for tyres.
He's not sitting miles away off the back of 4th place either, so provided he keeps his nose clean and the guys up front keep fighting, we could see him start to come into this towards the end of the race, which would be good to see. He's been a bit of a silent runner this week and last week. Last week obviously suffered a disconnection really early on, so yeah, good to see him out there.
I mean, we can have a look at his information there on the centre of the screen, and his split time to all U82. It's chipping down quite regularly. It looks as though he's making tenths up every couple of seconds. In fact, it looks as though we're just increasing there through the braking of turn 4. But as it opens up, it does look as though he's got speed on all U82, and with 32 minutes remaining of this session, he's definitely got it in him to maybe fight for a 4th spot. And the 3rd place isn't that far away from all U82 either, so all it'll take is mistakes from any of the front runners, and anybody, Lecky, KML, Bryan, or All Right Turkish might be in for a shout. All Right Turkish there as well, worth a mention. It looks as though his relatively slow pace, but consistently slow pace, is paying off for him at the moment. He currently finds himself in 7th spot, so that'll do him nicely, I think, if he can hold out till that and maybe make any inroads for anybody making mistakes later on down the line. Let's go track with our current race leader, though, Matthew, aka Fast AF Gamer, in that BMW M6, making it pretty easy so far, around 10 seconds clear, and he can ease off the pace ever so slightly. Currently lapping around 135.7s, and he'll be trying to maintain that just to make sure he keeps anybody else at bay, but also not put his car under too much strain or lose his concentration by pushing too hard.
It does look like the St. Bath is doing a good job of just maintaining that gap, which, as memory serves, is the same thing he did to Bruce Law last week at Silverstone. Just stayed within that window. 10 seconds sounds like a lot, but one mistake and that will quickly disappear, especially if you have to pit for damage or tyres afterwards. So he'll be looking to either, well, definitely push and close that gap up, but if nonetheless just maintain that gap at the very least.
So we've got a bit more action going on down the field there. Alright Turkish and Kamal Bryan. Let's have a look at this one. So Alright Turkish in that Demon Tweaks red and green liveried at Z4. Kamal Bryan in the Audi R8. Let's jump into the chase cam of Kamal Bryan and have a look at the variance between these two guys' lines and braking points. Just approaching the second chicane there, and we see Kamal Bryan much earlier on the brakes than Alright Turkish. That could just be the difference between running on a gamepad and running on a wheel.
KML has got some fans out there tonight up in the YouTube comment section. Marcus Saar, forgive me if I've got that wrong, saying go Brian. So he's obviously got some fan base growing in the works behind the scenes.
Taking a big gamble there up the inside into the hairpin, just running a little bit wide, but he's getting closer and closer with that one. We've seen him run ever so slightly wide and into the gravel traps a couple of times, but he's at least keeping it sort of within the track margins there. He just lost out on a little bit of pace and momentum, and that allowed Alright Turkish to come back in, but he's going to have another bite of the cherry in this next lap. To wait and see how it plays out, but it looks to be shaping up quite well. Kamal Bryan there just having to lift off ever so slightly. I think he maybe turned in a little bit too hard, ended up scrubbing some speed, and here he is on that dreaded second corner. Doesn't look too comfortable on that one, and that's allowing Alright Turkish to make a big gap up ahead. Let's jump back trackside and have a look how he is through this relatively quick right-hander.
It definitely looks like that first sector is catching him out. Probably the difference, as you said, driving on a pad, he's not going to have that same sort of feeling and sensation of what the car's doing underneath him through that sort of... It's not as smooth as it looks coming through there. The car will definitely move it around underneath him. It's just whether we can feel that in the pad or not. Whereas Turkish is on a wheel. We'll be able to deliver the turning much smoother, much more progressive. But we are seeing in the sort of back half of the lap, KML catch right back up again. So, tale of two halves, obviously.
Most definitely, and it's whether or not you can get past him and then maintain that through the first sector of the corner. It looks as though he's about to move up the inside. Turkish went defensive, but it looked as though it had cost him. Both drivers are going to be away. It doesn't look as though there was much of an impact there. Actually, in my eyes, that looked as though it was Alright Turkish's fault. It did look as though Kamal Bryan had got his car up alongside him into the rear quarter of Alright Turkish. And Alright Turkish maybe just not spotting the fact that there was a big Audi R8 up his inside and ended up turning in. But maybe one for the stewards. We'll have to wait and see as we see Lecky now into the pits. Lecky's hard work is about to be undone by both Kamal Bryan and Alright Turkish. Let's have a look at him. Looks as though he has come in and maybe changed up some tyres. So we'll get back to the action between these two drivers. And as you quite rightly pointed out, look at the difference in the gap between Kamal Bryan and Alright Turkish within the first sector of this one, and then let's make a comparison to it throughout the second and third sector of the circuit, and I can almost guarantee Bryan will be right up there. So definite tale of two halves. Alright Turkish much quicker in sector 1, but Kamal Bryan able to make it all the way back up in sector 2 and 3. It's from this point on, really.
I think might have been explains that little sort of coming together in the hairpin there. I think Turkish has sort of realised how quick KML comes up on the back of him in this back sector here, and sort of seen him. He was quite a way back under braking and just closed up so quick that I think you sort of said they just wasn't expecting him to be there.
I think perhaps, in fact, it's quite odd because I saw KML O'Brien into the hairpin. Sorry, it wasn't the hairpin. I think it might have been turn 2. He was much quicker on the brakes. He was braking much earlier than All Right Turkish. But it looks as though in the later sections of the circuit, KML O'Brien being braver on the brakes and able to make up huge amounts of time up on Turkish. But maybe not through that lap. KML O'Brien currently 1.4 seconds away from the 5th place now of All Right Turkish.
So Lecky has come out the pits just behind Uniclark, about 5 seconds off, and sitting at, it looks like 10 seconds off the back of this pack here. So if he's changed for tyres, he should be closing in on these guys real soon, or even if it was just damage repair. We should see him sort of appearing in the background of this sooner rather than later.
Well, we did see Lecky running 1 minute 36 before his pit stop. So if he can get in there, then we're probably looking at about sort of 5, 6, maybe even 7 laps before he'll be up and amongst these guys, if he can keep that race pace consistent. We'll have to wait and see how it plays out. I am expecting big moves as well from Uniclark. Uniclark now 5 seconds behind KML O'Brien. We'll probably just see him entering our screen, maybe not from that camera angle. But Uniclark putting in 1 minute 35, so currently lapping 3 seconds quicker than the rest of these guys, and only 6 or 7 seconds away. So a couple of laps time, we'll see Uniclark's big yellow Bentley flying up and around this action for 5th place.
And while I've been watching this, it looks like Wanter has got round St Bath there, both of them dropping way back off of Faster Gamer, but it looks like a little change at the top there that we missed while we were caught up in this action.
Let's have a little fly over to them. We will return to that action at the moment. Let's have a look at Wanter at the moment in his white, purple and yellow liveried Porsche 911.
Remember, purple cars go faster.
Definitely, and on three wheels as well, apparently, according to that camera angle. But Wanter's going great guns compared to his lap times of St Bath. I wonder whether or not these two drivers, they look as though they're forming what is looking like it's going to be a mighty rivalry through this season. We saw there was definite hard pushing going on and heavy defending at the early stages of this race. I can't remember spotting anything of interest, with any massive key moments in the last one, but maybe your memory serves a little bit better, Alex. But yeah, it looks as though we're getting a good rivalry building up between Wanter and St Bath. It's going to be interesting as the season progresses.
Yeah, well, I think it was Wanter and Uniclark last week at Silverstone, and Uniclark just putting in tons of pressure, Mr. Consistent, and Wanter just pushing so hard to get around him. He made that big mistake coming onto the hangar straight at the back there, I believe. Very similar to what we saw at the start of this race, but he seems to have settled down and got himself into a much better rhythm. But it's a big gap to make up to Fast AF Gamer, who has been is near enough just checked out as soon as the green lights went.
Lap times have been consistent pretty much as soon as we settle down, sort of after lap 5 or 6. Lap times just constantly running a 1:36.5. He may need to pick up the pace ever so slightly just to make sure he keeps that 20-second buffer. As we see Wanter there getting very messy on his way through the first chicane. That's going to see St Bath closing right up on him, and it has indeed. Let's jump over to St Bath and have a look at what's going to happen here in the chase cam.
While that's going on, KML has just dropped himself into the pits there. So he's going to be coming out, hopefully just behind Lecky, but maybe behind Luke if he's not careful. Depends how bad the damage repairs are that he's getting done.
It's whether or not he's coming for damage repairs. We did see a couple of little bumps with the wall, and there was obviously that little bump with All Right Turkish as well, but hopefully not too much damage done. The front end of the car looked pretty solid, but you are currently watching this battle between St Bath and Wanter at the moment. doesn't look as though it's changed much. There was a slight mistake through the first chicane that allowed half a second to be gained, but it's since been pulled away from Wanta. Wanta looks as though he's just able to turn on the taps in terms of his lap times here throughout the sectors, whereas St. Bath is just trying to continue running his own race. We've now got KML Bryan just exiting the pit lane, so looks as though he's going to be relatively close. We bring up the map here to, I think that might be Luke potentially running along. Let's have a look.
I think that's Luke. He's just coming into turn 1 now, so he's got a bit of clean air here to get his head down and start motoring on. He's got a front marker is going to be coming up on him real close. I think that's going to be Alu82.
And I think then, as we rode on board with KML Bryan, I think potentially tyre wear was going to be the main cause of the problem. I can hear wheels locking up, and if he's doing that quite consistently, it was on a pretty high-speed corner as well, so locking those wheels at high speed is definitely going to cost you tyre degradation and potential some flat spotting.
See a little lock up there.
Just a little puff of smoke, but those are going to add up, and it will eventually cause some flat spotting, which is going to unbalance your car, or even worse, get those tyre temperatures up, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, that car just snaps away from you.
And it looks like Uniclark has fallen back into the class of Lecky there, like we thought was going to happen. Lecky obviously already pitted for either tyres or damage, we're not sure which, but wherever he is, it seems to be paying off for him.
Yeah, his lap time's looking pretty solid. Uniclark's lap time surprisingly high that last time around. It's likely to be impeded as well from the pressure that's mounted now from Lecky, as Uniclark will get defensive with this one. These two guys have raced with each other a lot over the years, and knowing each other's flaws, so that'll allow Lecky to know which buttons to press to try and catch Uniclark out off guard. But as we saw last week in any of the races that we cover from Uniclark really competent at sticking to his game plan and blocking off any offensive moves that he might see coming up in his mirrors. So it's going to be a big battle, this one.
I've been stuck behind Uniclark for many a lap, and he's a very difficult puzzle to try and solve. And the second you think you've worked him out, it just changes, and he's so consistent. Some guys you can pile on the pressure and sort of force the error, and that's just not going to work with Uniclark at all.
I can think of a handful of touring car races that I've covered personally between with battles with Uniclark and yourself, and really closely matched, and it usually just results in the first one to make a mistake takes the position. Did look as though Lecky was that first one to make a mistake as he came through turn 1. Looked as though he did just run a little bit wide, and that's why we've seen that gap now stretching open. Let's have a look at the speed difference though as we come down two relatively quick parts of the section of the track. Sorry, see whether or not Lecky can make gains on that big heavy Bentley. Does look as though he is closing down that split time ever so slightly, but Lecky there getting very wild under braking, losing that back end, catching it really well, but that is going to scrub some speed, and it looks as though he was offline. Managed to keep it on the black stuff. I didn't know whether or not we were about to see Lecky spinning round in absolute chaos after losing the back end.
And those are the sorts of mistakes that you just can't make when you're trying to get around Uniclark. That's going to pay. That's going to be costly for Lecky.
Well, we can see it there within the split time. Just a couple of mistakes on one lap has now cost him around about a second and a half time, which, as you say, when compared to the pace and consistency of a driver like Uniclark, that's going to be a mountain to overcome, and it's still going up at the moment. Let's have a look back between Wanta and St. Bath at the moment. Let's have a look at the difference between those. Currently around about a second and a half difference between them. That battle has just kept on coming on. Apologies to Fast AF Gamer when he watches this stream back. I know that he quite often watches our coverage of this. We see St. Bath there getting a little bit wild. But yeah, apologies for the lack of coverage here, Fast AF. It does look as though you've just been so steady that unfortunately we haven't got much to cover apart from you beasting it round a track. But interesting, he has been able to take around about 2 seconds off his lap time. Remember how I said that the lap times of second and third place were coming down below him. He's now extended that 20-second lead to 24 seconds by upping his game by a 1 minute 36 laps to 1 minute 34.3 laps. So fantastic driving from him, and showing that he has got a little bit of pace just held in reserves for as and when it's needed.
And that sort of shows the experience of him, really, knowing that he hasn't got to push when he doesn't need to, keeping cool and turning it on when he has to.
I think that is what makes the sort of front runner in any driver, and you can see it in real world or in the sim racing world. Let's just have a quick look over to Sebastian there. Did he lose it? I'm not sure. It looks as though he's on track relatively well.
And while that's going on, it looks like Uniclark and Lecky have caught up to the back of, I'm guessing it's all like Turkish, on the back of the two, 4th and 5th there.
Let's have a look over as we go trackside here. That is all right Turkish at the moment. Uniclark just coming into view as we see Luke Snipes entering the pits. That's going to set him even further down the running order here with 16 minutes to go. But currently tracking around that Demon Tweaks of all right Turkish, who'll be doing everything that he can to try and stay in this position, because he's currently running 5th, and that'll be a good finish for him in just his 2nd season in GT3 Championship racing.
He'll be very much aware that there's a large yellow Bentley arriving in his rear view.
Oh, I have no doubt about that. He'll be keeping an eye up on his Motec there, having a look at the split times behind them. And I wouldn't be too surprised, actually, if when that big yellow Bentley gets up alongside, whether or not All Right Turkish just decides it's not worth it and moves alongside. I know you'll find that with some drivers in some situations, when you know that you just can't keep up with them in terms of lap time, you're actually going to lose a lot more time trying to fend them off than you are just letting them go past and then getting your eyes in the game, maybe following their laps and utilising their slipstreams to the best of your advantage whilst you can. But we'll have to wait and see how this one pans out. They're about to go wheel to wheel in the next lap, as far as I make out. Let's go into the chase cam of Lecky so we can try and get a good view of this.
I was just going to mention, I think Lecky is praying that Turkish has got the fighting in to try and back Uniclark up a little bit.
Yeah, that'll allow him to just maybe breeze on through, but that gap's not come down as much as expected. I mean, we did see that Turkish was fast against KML Bryan in this first sector. I wonder whether or not it would be interesting to see his first sector time, how fast he is, because it looks as though he's managing to pull away from Uniclark ever so slightly in those first few turns. Maybe just the difference in weight between that Z4 and these two big German powerhouses.
I think this is where we're going to see it coming into these two braking zones here. Lecky and Uniclark are going to close right up on that little BMW, especially on the exits of the corners. It looks like they can just get the yeah, as we saw last week for Uniclark, you can just get the power down so early. As you can see here, look, close right up under the braking.
It looks as though Turkey's there.
It's like Lecky's wish has come true.
That's allowed Lecky right through. Now Lecky moving over to the outside, which will be the inside, coming up into the hairpin. Turkish looking to defend it and just closes that door on him. Did it cleanly though, so that's not going to matter him too much. And it has paid off quite well for Lecky. We're now back onto that Bentley of Uniclark, and we'll keep an eye out on this. I'll just move the split times from you just to clear up that full screen as we see Lecky now looking to go outside and cut back in.
Good move.
It was second guessed though by All Right Turkish, and this is now playing out into the hands of Uniclark, just waiting in the wings, waiting for a mistake to be made.
Turkish will be using all of his racing experience that he has. Lecky losing it there.
Gets very wide and just costs him a little bit of time, able to get back out on track and close up the gap once again to Uniclark. So really hot triplet of action coming on here. Sorry to interrupt you there, Alex.
I was just saying that Turkish is going to be using all of his real-world racing experience. I know he races, I believe it's a Porsche Cup that he sort of runs in real life, and it seems to be paying dividends now, blocking and defending from these two guys here.
Well, he's gotten some stick in previous races in the Women's Racing Days about his defending, but it does look as though he's got it screwed right on here. He's making it very difficult for Uniclark and Lecky. Uniclark and Lecky now just trying to take advantage. Lecky moves on through. Oh, and in fact, it's cost Uniclark into the wall, so potentially another pit stop going to be required. 12 minutes remaining of the session. Uniclark will keep it out on track, I think, if he can, because he's going to come under some pressure with a pit stop under KML O'Brien and Luna Zodiac.
And it looks like
it's all up to Lecky.
So it looks like Uniclark just on the entrance to that corner. It's sort of very steep, very cambered. It looks like he just sort of popped himself out the top of it almost. As Lecky gets in the wall there.
Did look as though that was a very late change in direction from Turkish after we'd been singing his praises on his defensive driving. Just moved across Lecky and blocked him as he went to the inside. So I can imagine all sorts of words being said inside the cockpit of the AMG. We'll have to wait and see whether or not a steward's inquiry gets launched, but it looks as though we're struggling to get the car away.
It also looks like Uniclark has opted to go into the pit. So obviously fancied his chances in getting out in front of KML.
It's going to be hard pressed. In fact, we can see Wanta there now just lapping over him, and that is St. Bath also coming over. They're putting him under a blue flag the next time around, but it's going to be a long stint inside the pit box this to get those repairs done, I think, even if they were minor. Let's keep an eye out on this and have a look for KML O'Brien coming round that corner.
While we are watching that, it looks like Wanta and St. Beth have taken a little chunk of time out of fast to go. It's not going to be enough just yet, but still 10 minutes to go. They have to really push on, but they are sort of chipping away at it ever so slightly. Maybe Faster Gamer just easing up on his tyres there, just sort of trying to get her home, as it were.
So this looks as though we've got Uniclark now coming out the pits, but I could just see on the right hand side of the screen KML O'Brien and his Audi R8 has made it around. He is going to come out of the pit lane, which is just to the bottom left hand side of your screen here, but it's not going to be in enough time. Let's continue to watch. Yep, Uniclark there costing big time, falls all the way back down to 8th position, and that position definitely not reflective of his ability in that Bentley Continentals. Let's see whether or not he can make it back up in the remaining 10 minutes of this session that's left to go.
Still 10 minutes left, and with sort of the close fighting that we've had, there could be plenty more mistakes left to come, so not completely over for Uniclark yet, although a tall order to fill.
That's correct. In fact, whilst it looks as though most cars are currently quite well separated, apart from maybe KML and Uniclark, in fact, let's switch on over to that, make sure we don't miss any of that action. Don't forget that you can catch all of Flux Motorsports racing throughout the week by subscribing to our YouTube channel as well as our social media channels. I mean, you are currently watching it on here, so make sure you hit the subscribe button to make sure you don't miss any of the action. Next race, of course, is going to be our GT1 championship, which this week at Thursday at 8 o'clock PM, you can join Lecky and the console for joining us around Road America's GP circuit. Definitely going to be a challenging one, that one. Really hard circuit in the easiest of cars, and these GT1s certainly not the easiest. So join, it's NRP and Lecky for that one on Thursday evening at 8 o'clock PM. Then of course you can join us on Sunday morning at 10:30 AM UK time for the Formula Renault Championship. Bruce Law leading the charge on that one, but it does look as though there are going to be inroads to be made from the rest of the drivers. Tyjo 1212 looking to try and secure more points and potentially put some pressure on Bruce Law in that one. And then of course our Sunday night feature of the GT3 Championship, which you're currently watching now with myself and Alex, aka the console inside the box. So it looks as though that chunk of time that Wanta and St. Bath looks as though, did we just lose Uniclark?
It looks like Uniclark's gone around again, getting on the exit of the first chicane there. Super bumpy if you get it wrong.
Lost his head ever so slightly after that collision in the battle with Lecky. obviously just unnerved him ever so slightly, and
lost out to
now it's
Luna as
costing
well
him.
there.
Luna's McLaren 12C, they're looking pretty broken, but currently running ahead of Uniclark. Lap times aren't too bad either. Uniclark now sticking it out. We don't want to see another pit stop from him in the remaining 7 minutes of this session. Let's flick over to our race leader, get some action with him on track, and let's have a look at the timing board, see if we've had any penalties applied. So no penalties applied by the race director in this one. We're completely clean running. Any slowdowns have been adhered to, and no breach of the pit lane speed limit. So nice and clean going ahead of this one.
And you can just hear from that BMW just keeping it nice and smooth, not pushing too much, not trying overly hard, just keeping it nice, clean and tidy all the way home.
That's the thing now, isn't it? You're not going to make up any places when you're in first position, so all you need to do is try and make sure that you've got a good cushion in front of you, and I'd say 19.8 seconds, which is currently the gap between himself and 1 to 13, is plenty of a cushion. And he'll just be maintaining that, making sure that there's no silly mistakes, and that he's got enough time to bring it on home. 6 minutes remaining now of this one, and it does look as though it is going to be handed over to Fast AF Gamer. It is a shame. Looks as though Bruce Law, his PlayStation was completely disconnected. Really unfortunate run of event, especially as the battle between himself and Fast AF Gamer was shaping up to be a great one. That being said, the rivalries that we've got forming within our championships here at Flux, we mentioned one between Uniclark and Wanta last week. Wanta massively complimentary of Uniclark's driving come the end of that one, and they do leave it all out on the track. As soon as they seem to come in, it's business as usual and a handshake all round to discuss the points, and action on there. Looks as though Uniclark has managed to make up a place, potentially Kamel Bryan falling back down the running order, so his consistency looks maybe as though it's fallen away. So in a 147 last time around, so that makes me think that there's either been a spin or maybe a bit of contact somewhere.
Be interested to see if Luna can hang on to that 7th place. We saw him having a bit of a shocker really to start this race, get taking damage early on. Seems like a good recovery driver. He can hang on to 7th. It's good points for him in the championship.
I mean, he's got a pretty tall order. We've got Uniclark raining down. In fact, let's flick over from our leader and have a look over at Luna. So that's split at the moment. Actually looks as though it's maintained to Uniclark. Like I say, I've got a sneaking suspicion that perhaps the incidents that have been caused have just knocked Uniclark's concentration ever so slightly. And it's so easily done. I think I spoke about it this morning in the Formula Renault coverage, but make one or maybe 2 mistakes in a row, and it just seems so much harder to get your eyes back into your sort of momentum and getting the smoothness of your lines. And you also tend to maybe grip that steering wheel a little bit harder and brake ever so slightly later, which can cost you big time when it comes down to mistakes being made. But here we see Uniclark raining down upon Luna now, able to make up a couple of tenths just in that sector, so maybe it's just a bit of cat and mouse for now.
The other thing to keep in mind is that it's a long race for the drivers, especially the guys that are on the wheels. 45 minutes is going to take it out of them, especially towards the end. If you had a tough race like Uniclark has, he's going to be fatigued in both ways, I expect.
And these guys are, they're more than used to putting in hours worth of game time on the rigs, but to do a 45-minute stint in one go is pretty tough. I mean, usually you'll see relatively long championship races, but just on the fringe of that sort of endurance period, it is so easy to lose your concentration when your palms are sweaty, your brow's just as sweaty as well. You've maybe been sat in the same position hovering over your clutch for the last 20 odd minutes since you last used it, and you just start to notice the smaller things that maybe take away that quarter of a second's worth of concentration. That's enough for you to miss out on your braking point. And Lunar Zodiac is going to have his work cut out. 2 minutes and 40 seconds remaining of this session. But Uniclark, hungry to make up for his mistakes earlier on in the race. It looks as though he maybe ran a little bit deep, but just opted in for the cutback there, I think.
Yeah, it seems to me that Luna just isn't getting the drive out of the corners that he needs here. He's sort of going too fast in and compromising his exit, where, as we saw in that hairpin there, Uniclark just opting to go a little slower in, run a little deeper, and take the drive all the way out. And we can see how quickly he's closed back up just in that sort of back straight there. Going to make a big difference.
Could well be experience this. Lunar Zodiac not too sure on his experience in a GT3 car, whereas Uniclark has run them for at least, as that I know of, at least a year, and I'm guessing so pretty longer than that, judging from his pace that I saw when I was first introduced. So maybe it's just a case of knowing the car and knowing the limitations of these GT3 cars ever so slightly. I mean, I am certainly a slow driver when I get inside one of these GT3 cars, and they're not flattering to all drivers, so maybe we'll see improvements as the season progresses from our Australian in Lunar Zodiac. We'll have to wait and see. Final 1 minute and a quarter remaining of tonight's second round in the GT3 Championship here at Zolder. Fast AF Gamer currently leading the charge. He is on lap 28. Looks as though he's going to get another couple of laps in before he gets the checkered flag. Then we've got Wanter in second, Simpbath in third. Then All U82 and All Right Turkish in fourth and fifth spot, with Lecky in sixth. And then this battle that you're currently seeing for seventh between Lunar Zodiac and Uniclark. KML Bryan slipping down into ninth place, and then Luke Snipes, who quite frankly has had a mare this evening, making a number of pit stops in 10th position.
It looks like Uniclark is just putting so much pressure onto Luna there. He's almost trying to force the error, and we nearly got one coming into those S's there. Luna locking up and running a little bit deep, just managing to hang on. But yeah, Uniclark definitely letting him know that he's there.
Not too sure if my eyes deceive me, but I'm pretty sure I just saw a green Porsche 911 bonnet of Luke Snipes flying in the air. Just in the background of that one. I'll be sure to have a look at that in the back, but I'm sure if we just if we were to flick over to Luke Snipes, we'd see that he's currently bonneting us. But
last minute weight reduction.
This is, yeah, most definitely. So this session is now closed. Let's bring up the lap board. I don't want to miss any of this action, but I also don't want to miss our current race leader to see whether or not he is the race winner. It looks as though he's got about half a lap to go on this one, so he's just finished his final lap. Let's flip back on over to that action then between Lunar Zodiac and Uniclark. Uniclark is potentially going to have one more lap after this. It all depends on when Fast AF Gamer crosses that line. But he's piling on the pressure now. He's forced the error, but he's made one himself. Just ends up getting too late on the brakes, and a big flash of the lights there from Lunar Zodiac, which I can only assume is him laughing away inside his cockpit. He isn't going to want to get too cocky though, because he might well have another lap yet to stem off him. But I'm sure that'll be made up with Lunar Zodiac. And there we can see a debonneted Porsche 911. So I was right in my assumption. It was Luke Snipes losing that bonnet. It must have been, it was just in this scene here, so just where the trucks are, I could see a bonnet flying as we see Luke Snipes now coming across the line and pretty much giving up with that one. Lunar Zodiac is going to have to bite this one out though, all the way to the end. Let's have a look at how that split time is changing from Uniclark. Looked as though that was KML Bryan parked up in a barrier, so that probably shows how his race finished up in the end.
That gap is closing super quick. Uniclark going all out now, all or nothing lap.
And he's closing it down rapidly as well, so less than 6/10 now, and it's going to be 5 by the end of this second chicane. Uniclark hasn't got much to lose though. He's not going to be caught up by the 9th place of KML Bryan should he lose it, and it looks as though there Lunar Zodiac getting a little bit too away. It does look as though he's going to allow that position back to Uniclark. So he's made the fair move there, Luna Zodiac, recognising that actually it was his mistake that caused it and allowing Uniclark to have that position back. So good, clean, fair driving, and that's what we like to see between our boys for sure. So it is going to be Uniclark who takes 7th position when he crosses over the line. Luna Zodiac actually having a good finish to get himself into 8th place. Big improvement there upon his DNF last week around. He was wrapped up in a steward's inquiry, which has since had a decision made against it with him and Old Smokey. He got absolutely sideswiped.
It looks like Luna Zodiac, sort of unsung hero. It looks like White Turkish managed to hang on to that 5th place, which
indeed.
I think, don't quote me on it, could be his highest finish. Definitely the championship setting. I'll have to double check that out for next week.
I think he did manage to get himself a. He might have got himself a 5th place in week 1 as well. I'm not too sure. But yeah, good running from him. So here are your final standings for the race. Matthew, aka Fast AF Gamer, taking that top spot with a gap of 20.5 seconds in the end to 1 to 13, who does really well to hold out St. Bath for that 2nd spot. St. Bath doing really well to get the 3rd place though, finishing around about 40 odd seconds ahead of his closest rival, which was the 4th place of all U82. As Alex mentioned, great finish from All Right Turkish in 5th spot in that BMW Z4, so that's going to be a good finishing position for him. Lecky 2000 also finishing well after his DNF last week due to a disconnection, so he's got himself up onto the running order quite well. Then we go down to Uniclark, who looked as though he was going to run really well at the start of this race, but later fell down the field due to a few mistakes, ended up clawing it back in the end to secure that 7th position. And then Luna Zodiac, who had a valiant run in the end to try and hold on to that 7th place, just a couple of corners towards the end, made a little mistake and it did cost him. KML Bryan finishes in 9th place, but it is a DNF, so we'll have to wait and see on that one. I think he did cross the line. I think he just parked it up after the leader had crossed, along with Luke Snipes as well. So they make up 9th and 10th position. Thanks very much for joining us this evening. I'm sure you've enjoyed what has been a pretty thrilling GT3 race. I know that I've certainly enjoyed it. How about you, Alex?
That was a great race action all the way through. Shame to see Bruce Lord disconnect. It'd be good to see him and Fast AF Gamer fight it out, but it's definitely mixed up the championship points. So week 3 we go to Catalonia in Spain, so it's still all to play for there.
Yeah, expect high temperatures so long as we have clear skies here, and if we don't have clear skies, I mean, you can check how it's going to be by checking the Google weather reports for Sunday at our simulated race time, which is 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Keep an eye out on that. If we do have any rain clouds coming over, it's going to be a very interesting race indeed. Into round 3 next week at the circuit to Catalonia. I've been your host, Murphy GBR. Thank you very much to my co-commentator in the box with me this evening, Alex, aka The Console. And we will see you again on Thursday evening for our GT1 coverage, where you'll find Lecky and NRP. Until then, enjoy your racing through the week. Head on over to www.fluxmotorsport.com if you want to join up in all of this action. And please, if you like the content that we push out, like and subscribe to all of our social media outlets. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your evening and have a good week ahead. Thank you.